A detective investigating a decades-old disappearance made a discovery that was never supposed to happen. Hidden beneath the floor of an abandoned house was something carefully concealed. Not money, not evidence, a diary. It belonged to a woman who vanished without a trace. Nancy Guthrie. For years, her case remained a mystery. No suspects, no answers. But inside that diary was a final entry, written just hours before she disappeared. And what she wrote changes everything we thought we knew. Nancy Guthrie was an ordinary woman. She had a routine, a life, people who knew her. Then one day, she was gone. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, no witnesses. It was as if she simply vanished into thin air. Police investigated the case, but nothing made sense. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. Eventually, the case went cold. People stopped asking questions. They accepted the simplest explanation. She disappeared. But not everyone believed that. Because sometimes, when something feels too clean, it usually means something is being hidden. Years later, the case was reopened. Detective Miller decided to take another look. Something about the case bothered him. There were too many gaps, too many things that didn't add up. So he went back to the last place Nancy was ever seen. Her house, old, quiet, almost forgotten. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Dust, silence, empty rooms. But then, he noticed something strange. The floorboards, one of them didn't match the others. It looked newer, recently disturbed, carefully placed, as if someone had hidden something and didn't want it found. So he pried it open, and that's when everything changed. Inside was a diary, old, worn, but protected. It belonged to Nancy. At first, it seemed normal. Daily thoughts, simple routines, nothing unusual. But as he kept reading, the tone began to shift. Her writing changed. It became more rushed, more anxious. She started writing about fear, about being watched, about feeling like something wasn't right. She mentioned things that didn't make sense. Meetings, conversations, people she didn't trust. And then, the paranoia got worse. She wasn't just afraid, she was certain. Something was wrong. Then came the final entry, the last thing she ever wrote. It was different, short, urgent, almost like she didn't have much time. It wasn't a goodbye, it was a warning. She wrote that she had discovered something she wasn't supposed to know, something dangerous. She didn't explain everything, but she left enough clues, enough to understand one thing. She was in danger, and she knew it. But the most disturbing part was who she was afraid of. According to the diary, the people involved weren't strangers. They weren't criminals hiding in the shadows. They were familiar, trusted, connected to the local police, the very people responsible for protecting her. If what she wrote is true, then this wasn't just a disappearance. It was something much bigger, a cover-up. If this is true, then Nancy didn't just disappear. She was silenced because she knew too much, and the truth was buried, hidden beneath her own home, waiting to be found. Detective Miller didn't stop at the diary. If Nancy was telling the truth, then this wasn't an isolated incident. So he started digging deeper. Old records, forgotten reports, cases no one talked about anymore. And that's when he noticed something disturbing. Nancy wasn't the only one. There were others. People who disappeared. Under strange circumstances. No suspects. No clear answers. Just like Nancy. At first it seemed like coincidence. But the more he looked, the clearer it became. This was a pattern. Each case had small details in common. Locations, dates, witness statements that didn't quite match. And one more thing. The same names kept appearing. Officers, officials, people connected to the system. At first it was subtle, easy to ignore. But once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Nancy wasn't just afraid. She had discovered something real, something dangerous. Detective Miller knew what this meant. If the diary was right, then he wasn't just investigating a case anymore. He was stepping into something much bigger, something that didn't want to be exposed. And the more he uncovered, the more dangerous it became. Files went missing. Records didn't match. People avoided his questions. It was as if someone was watching him, just like Nancy had written. Then it hit him. This wasn't just corruption. It was control. Information being hidden. Truth being buried. For years, maybe decades. Nancy had tried to expose it, and she paid the price. Now, he had to decide. Walk away. Or keep going. Because if he continued, he might end up just like her. Another name. Another case. Another mystery no one could solve. But if he stopped, the truth would stay buried forever, hidden, just like the diary. So the question is, how deep does this go? How many people knew and chose to stay silent? And most importantly, what really happened to Nancy Guthrie? Because if the truth is still hidden, then this story is far from over. Detective Miller went back to the diary. This time, he read it slower, more carefully, looking for things he might have missed. And that's when he noticed something strange. Names. They weren't written clearly, but they were there. Hidden between lines, short mentions, initials. Almost like Nancy was trying to hide them, even in her own writing. As if she knew someone might find it. And if they did, it had to be subtle. But once you connected the dots, the names pointed to something disturbing. People in positions of power. There was one more lead, an old witness. Someone who had spoken years ago, but was never taken seriously. Miller tracked him down. The man was older now, nervous, careful with his words. At first, he refused to talk, but eventually, he said something chilling. She knew too much. He claimed Nancy had been asking questions, dangerous questions, about things that weren't supposed to be discussed. And shortly after that, she disappeared. Not long after that meeting, something strange happened. Miller returned to his office and found a message. No name, no signature, just a few words. Stop digging. At first, he tried to ignore it, but then more things started happening. Calls with no voice, cars following him at night, and that feeling that he was no longer alone, just like Nancy had written.